Hi, I'm Ken Kessler, and welcome to the Sounds of Christmas podcast. If you're new to this podcast, I want to start by saying thanks for joining us. If you're not new, welcome back. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Now, to avoid any confusion, I want to start off by saying there won't be any music played here. This is a place for conversation. I'll talk about Christmas music and some related topics, sometimes by myself and sometimes with guests. If you're looking for music, just go to soundsofchristmas.com and click on the tree or the player on the front page or on the Listen Now page. We play the best variety of Christmas music all year long. Well, except in October, when we play the best variety of Halloween music. The last couple episodes, I've been doing something kind of special for Christmas in July. I've been inviting hosts of other Christmas-themed podcasts to come on the show and talk about their podcast, how they got started, why they do what they do, a little bit about their podcast, and some favorite episodes and that kind of thing. Because I just figured that if you're listening to this podcast, you obviously love Christmas and Christmas music, and there's probably lots of other things about Christmas that you love as well, just like all of us. Today, I'm joined by Glen from the Seasons Eating podcast and Joseph from Christmas Creeps. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
I'm just going to ask you guys some questions so everybody gets to know you and your podcast a little bit if they're not already listening. Glen, let's start with you. How long have you been hosting Seasons Eatings?
This is starting my third season. So I started in May of 2020. So it's been, 2 years plus a few months?
What led you or drove you to start doing this podcast?
Well, I'm a certified baker. I've been doing that since 2011. And when I was in school, we learned to make all these sort of holiday foods because school ran from September through till May or April. And the first half of the year, we learned how to make all the Christmas stuff that people buy, like the fruitcake and the stollen and the panettone and all that stuff, because we had to learn how to bake commercial goods. And all that stuff got made by the students and got shipped to the commissary for people to buy, the students and the teachers upstairs. So while I was making this, of course, we learn, how it was made with the ingredients and a little bit of science behind it. And I was always fascinated that, we make this product once, maybe twice a year, even though nowadays you can get ingredients any time of the year. So why is it that we only make it at one time of year? So I got to thinking, I've been listening to podcasts for a few years, and I was listening first to Brian Earl's Christmas Past podcast, and he touched on a few food-related topics like candy canes and all that stuff. And I couldn't find any other podcasts out there that talked about the topic of food to go into a really deep dive about the history and the origins of the foods that we love during the holidays. So I said, why not? And, the lovely pandemic that we all had 2.5 years ago gave me a little bit extra free time. And I talked with Todd Killian from Christmas Clatter, and he gave me the logistics side and all that stuff about hosting and recording and starting a podcast. And he was very super helpful. And I just jumped in both feet.
One of the things that I really love about Seasons Eatings is that there have been several times where you have brought up something and I never heard of that particular food item. And I would see the post on Twitter and I think, okay, that's something that I'm not interested in making. I wouldn't even try it if somebody gave it to me. But the way you present it is so interesting, and the story behind it makes me want to know more about it, even if there's no way I'd ever take a bite of that. Do you ever bring up stuff, and this is probably a dumb question, that being in the industry that you're in, you probably get this a lot, but do you ever focus a podcast on something that you feel that way about, that you have no interest in eating, but it's an interesting story?
Oh, absolutely. There are many foodstuffs out there, not Christmas related, but sometimes winter holiday related, that I will never try. I'm pretty open about trying new foods, and I'll maybe even take one bite just to say I've done it. But some of the stuff, like there's a fermented shark that a lot of Icelandic people like to eat during the holidays. I'm sorry. I can't. So, and a lot of stuff that I researched, for example, making gelatin out of pig's feet. I mean, personally, I wouldn't want to do it because it stinks when it's broken down, and I'll just, leave that to the commercial factories to make these lovely little sachets of powdered gelatin that I can use. So yeah, there are plenty of things that I will not try, but I'll definitely research, because even though I won't try it, I will definitely have a fascination of why and how it's made. It seems to be a thing for me. When I was a kid, I'd always sort of pick things apart, and I'd take a radio apart. Unfortunately, wouldn't know how to put it back together, but just to see the individual parts and how they're made. And the same thing with cooking. It's always fascinating to me how you take individual ingredients, you put them together in a certain combination, and they make something completely different. So I thought that fascination would, if I like to think about it, there's got to be a few other people out there who like to think about it as well.
Oh, sure. That's kind of how I feel about the Sounds of Christmas music station, that I don't play everything, but I play a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of stuff that I like. And the hope is that there are other people out there who like it as well. Joseph, how long have you been doing the Christmas Creeps podcast?
We are in our 8th quote unquote season right now, I suppose, but we do our show all year round. So it's hard to think of it that way. We've been doing it since the January of 2015. And so we've definitely been at this for a long time.
Yeah. What led you to start Christmas Creeps?
A couple of things. So I've been writing about movies semi-professionally since 2009. And then right around the Christmas of 2014, a family member passed away, my grandmother, and Christmas was her absolute favorite thing in the whole world. Like the whole family's year revolved around, my grandmother's, Christmas, celebration. So after that happened, the next year I had Christmas on the brain, and I just said to a couple of friends, wouldn't it be fun if we watched Christmas movies all year round? And my friends are the kind of friends who take things like that as a challenge. So they said, well, why don't we do that? And not realizing that I'm like a true believer as far as Christmas movies go. Like I will watch just about anything. And they're just kind of along for the ride. So it's become a little bit of like a mystery science theater sort of experiment where I will try to find a weirder or stranger or just off the beaten path Christmas movie to try and torture my friends with. But I do it out of a place of love because I genuinely do enjoy the holidays, and I try to, this is my way of stretching it out across the calendar year, every year, as long as I can. And at this point, we're just too stubborn to stop.
One of the things that I've found in coming into contact with so many different hosts of Christmas podcasts is that we all love different things about Christmas, and it's not the same for everybody, because there will be, like you're talking about some of these movies, there will be some of these that are tradition for some people, and there are other people who will turn the channel as soon as they see that movie coming on. But for some of these, I don't want to call them strange, because they're parts of people's celebration. I guess one of the most famous ones would be like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've done that one.
That's an awesome movie.
Yeah.
we did that one very early on, and it's one that if we ever went back around to rewatching for the show, I would love to do that again, because it's just such a kitschy, strange experience to watch this 60s sci-fi movie about Santa Claus conquering Martians. And that's the kind of thing that I live for as a film fan. So to be able to share that with other people there's nothing better than that for me.
And of course it has the great song "Hooray for Santa Claus" that actually has been
absolutely
covered by a lot of bands in the last 20 years. Almost every year I get somebody who sends me their cover of this song, And it's just a surprise. It was a surprise, I guess, at first that somebody would cover that, but now it's just kind of fun.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, there was, I don't remember if it was a commercial for some car company or a cell phone company, but they used a cover of Hooray for Santa Claus. And the first time I saw that on TV, I thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah, it's definitely unexpected. Glenn, has there been any episode or episodes that you think of as your favorite that you've done?
There's been a few. I'm from Canada. I'm originally from Newfoundland. I'm living here now, and I have to say that the one I did for Christmas Day a couple of years ago that talked about our traditions here in Newfoundland is one of my favorites. I mean, more for nostalgia reasons for me. So the foods that my mom made for Christmas and the foods that I grew up with was a more intimate deep dive. And the other one I've done is, again, a little bit more selfish, Canadian Christmas foods. That was done, I think, the year after I did the Newfoundland one. But for individual episodes, I think one of my favorites is candy canes, because we all think of that myth that they were made to keep children quiet during church services, and I found out that that's not true. I mean, it is. I mean, you can give them candy to keep them quiet, but it didn't stay. That's not where candy canes started from.
Candy canes are always have a special place in my heart. As a kid, that was the beginning of the Christmas season, because the local drugstore chains, I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, put out their boxes of Bob's candy canes on September 25th, 3 months. And that to me was the official start of the season. And I always think of that now. I don't know if Bob's candy canes even exist anymore. They've probably been gobbled up by somebody else. But that was just one of those things that's the beginning of the Christmas season. When you're in this now and you do a podcast about Christmas foods, is there still something for you that makes you think that now it's the Christmas season?
Well, we get the Christmas creep. It seems to, as everyone thinks, it seems to come earlier and earlier. But for me, the Christmas creep never exists because it's always around. So most of the time, I think we have Thanksgiving in October. So the first week end in October for us. So as soon as that's done, it seems to be the Christmas season for us. So mid-October, it's nice chill in the air, and it's just you could see your breath in the morning when you're outside, and just that sort of crispness always seems to be the start of the season for me.
Is there any particular food that you associate with it, or is that too much in the business now?
I think it's more in the business. Like for me, if I'm making stuff, like I start making fruitcake in September because you have to let it ferment for at least a month or two. So that seems to be the trigger, if you want to call it that, for me. I get seeing all these advertisements of like jelly or glassy fruits and all the stuff that you need to make fruitcakes. And again, going back to the school thing, that's when we started to make them, because we would have to ship them out to stores and get them ready for the holidays. And in the holiday season, in the stores start, like I said, either late October, early November. So you're making fruitcake in August and September, unfortunately, in the heat. So yeah, for me, the Christmas season personally, though, yeah, making fruitcake in September and then starting to plan making all the other cookies and squares and all that stuff that seemed to just go on for months.
Fruitcake gets such a bad rap, but I don't feel like it always did. Have you done a deep dive about when it became so much more of a punchline than an anticipated holiday pastry? that even a pastry?
Yeah, I did a fruitcake episode a little while ago, and it seems to be like the turn of this, well, not this century, like the turn of the 20th century. Fruitcake became more of a joke because it was passed down from generation to generation. And you actually have a news article about a family that kept a fruitcake for over 100 years, and you couldn't eat it, obviously, because it's hard as a rock. But it was just, yeah, it seemed to be around the mid 1940s, 50s, it became more of a joke. Coincidentally, like coincidentally, I guess, with TV and that sort of running gag of bad food and women who don't know how to cook and all that stuff, and then it sort of snowballed from there.
I love a good fruitcake, and there are good fruitcakes and there are bad ones that you can, pick up in the checkout line that at Walmart or Target that are mass produced, and they're like little bricks. But a good fruitcake is delicious, and that's a Christmas thing for
handmade fruitcakes. If you can, make your own. But yeah, of course, the ones in the stores, they want to make money, obviously, so they cut back on the fruit and nuts and try to fill it up with sugar and a few other flavors, and unfortunately it just doesn't taste the same, at least to me.
No, not me either, not at all. Joseph, has there been an episode or multiple episodes of Christmas Creeps that you think of as your favorite?
I think the most recent one that shows off kind of what we do best, last holiday season, there was a film that came out called 8-Bit Christmas, where the story was that it was basically the plot of the film A Christmas Story, but it was told set in the 80s, and it was about a kid who just wants a Nintendo for Christmas. And that was a fun one for us because my two co-hosts and I are particularly, if there's one thing we love more than movies, it's video games, and we would always rather be talking about video games. So we went into that one thinking that we would be picking it apart from their perspective of, what are they getting wrong about video games? And what we found instead was we realized all three of us have a certain fondness for A Christmas Story, and we all wound up nitpicking different parts of 8-Bit Christmas compared to, what is it trying to do to ape off of A Christmas Story, and the way, just the way that modern Christmas movies try to call back to, the classics that we all know and love from our youth. And I think that one definitely shows off sort of kind of the perfect cross section of our interests as hosts. So if anybody wants to go to a Christmas Creeps to start with, I would recommend 8-Bit Christmas.
I saw that movie last year, and that's exactly what I thought. I'm like, they just moved A Christmas Story up 40 years to the 80s.
Right.
Yeah.
And changed the ending just a slight bit at the end. But It's like A Christmas Story with a little bit of never-ending story stuck in the beginning. Like the kid telling, all that sort of, what was it like in the 80s, Dad?
We thought it was going to be like a Ready Player One situation where they just name check, video games left and right.
Yeah.
And to its benefit, it turns out not to be quite that bad.
I was pleasantly surprised, but also a little bit cheesed because it like you said, it was almost like a Christmas Story word or play for play.
Right. It was just so nakedly that story told again.
Yeah. Yeah. The school bully, the quest of getting the game instead of the BB gun.
Mom having her reasons for the kid not getting it. Dad having his reasons. It's
Dad being a mean old guy.
It's a formula, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's the name of the game.
Yeah, it was banking on nostalgia for anybody who loved the 80s, going to the mall and all of that kind of at Christmas time and all of that kind of stuff.
I think it did piggyback on that because when the people who saw A Christmas Story in the 80s have grown up and now have kids who want to, and they sort of, I think, relied on that nostalgia to make the 8-Bit movie.
Right. And it's just the naked nostalgia play that I think we all found so grating. That's absolutely.
Has there been any topic, any movies that Joseph, that you have wanted to cover or feature but you haven't gotten around to yet? Anything specific? Bucket list kind of thing?
Bucket list kind of thing. The one that we always keep in our back pocket as a, in case of emergency, we'll just default to this one, is It's a Wonderful Life. We've gone 8 years talking about Christmas movies and we've never once covered It's a Wonderful Life.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Part of it is because, we do tend to go and find less than great Christmas movies. And we all recognize that, that's kind of the untouchable, sacred cow of Christmas movies.
Right.
But at some point we're going to have to talk about it. And there's so much to discuss with it. I would love to take a crack at it sometime. Not because
there are so many other movies out there that are inspired by, to put it bluntly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I would love to dig into, is just, how influential it has this been truly on the entire genre, on the entire sort of landscape of Christmas movies. It's kind of without compare. And I think we haven't talked about it yet because we all kind of know in the back of our minds that all that's true. So why rehash it? But at the same time, it would be a lot of fun.
And like A Christmas Carol, there have been so many TV shows, so many sitcoms especially, that have lifted the It's a Wonderful Life idea and used it for a holiday episode one year. The one, of course, that leaps to mind for me is Married with Children, when they did It's a Bundyful Life.
Oh, there was a female version with Mary Steenburgen, I think.
I seem to recall that one, but the one that immediately comes to mind to me, and it's just because I watched the new film today, is the Beavis and Butthead It's a Wonderful Life parody, where Beavis gets to see what his life would be like if Butthead wasn't around. And it turned out his life would have been so much better.
There we go. I think one of the trivia things about that movie, it only became popular as a Christmas movie because they didn't, at the time, it was like one of those public domain things, and the channel that bought it kept playing it over and over on loop one year for Christmas. Because back in the day, people went home for the holidays and you didn't need anybody to man the tapes, to change the tapes. So they just press play and just let it run all day. And it was just because of that, it became a Christmas classic. Like when it first came out, it wasn't very popular. Like I think it came out in the summer.
Yeah.
Right. So as I understand it, its popularity has only grown over time. And I wonder how much of that has to do with like televised Stockholm syndrome. We love it because it's just the thing that we've always watched.
I find that with fruitcake.
Of course. Yeah.
It's funny.
We have to have it because we've always had it.
I think in the 80s, especially, there was it was public domain. There was no licensing on it, so it seemed like it was on every channel at some point in December. You could guarantee that you'd turn on the TV and you'd be able to find It's a Wonderful Life.
And I think now, like either AMC or TCM or one of those nostalgia movie channels, they replay A Christmas Story, or they replay like another Christmas movie just on loop.
Oh yeah.
Turner Broadcasting's been doing that with Christmas Story for I think at least 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think I don't remember if it's AMC or Stars, somebody who does that with National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, just over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And the turkey.
And and that's one of those things that for some it becomes tradition. I remember years ago that the kids would be asleep and I would be downstairs wrapping gifts on Christmas Eve, and my wife would be upstairs in our bedroom wrapping stuff, and we'd both be watching A Christmas Story over and over while we're wrapping. You could have it on, and it was Christmas wallpaper to have on in the background. But it just became tradition. Glenn, is there any anything in particular that you have wanted to cover or feature on Seasons Eatings that you haven't gotten around to yet? Any kind of bucket list stuff?
I'm constantly finding new things that I didn't really know existed because my background is English Irish, so I'm about as white bread as you can get. And so my traditional Christmas dinner is, turkey, stuffing, boiled vegetables, and all that stuff. So now that I'm sort of diving into other cultures, there are so many different amazing foods that I haven't even heard of before. So I don't, to the point of having a topic that I haven't talked about, I don't think so. But the great thing is that I get to explore different cultures and figure out, where their food comes from and how it became a tradition for them.
It seems like sometime in the past year, and if I'm wrong, I could just edit this out. But it seems like didn't you do something about pfeffernuss?
Yes. Yeah, little pepper nuts.
Yeah. 10, 15 years ago, I don't know that I'd ever heard of it. And then it started showing up in stores, Trader Joe's and different places that like a Christmas tradition. And I had never heard of it before, but they're delicious little cookies. Is this something that has been sort of manufactured and is a new tradition, or is this just something that we've finally caught up on?
No, it's been around for centuries. I think it's only because of the sort of German emigration to the U.S. that it's kind of caught on the last 100 years or so. You have the Pennsylvania Dutch. You have a lot of German immigrants to the northern states. I know there's that Frankenmuth, which has the world's largest Christmas store. That's little Bavaria, basically. And so you could find the Pfeffernuss in sort of German sort of culture and little enclaves in towns and stuff. But I think now that, we've got the internet and it just seems to be more prolific and easy to get access to information. And it's always that sort of psychological effect. If someone talks about Volkswagen bugs, all of a sudden you see them everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I think that was probably a little bit there too. So if you just notice the topic of Pfeffernusse, and then all of a sudden your mind is attuned to it, and then instead of just passing it by in a window, you actually stop and have a look. But that's the great thing about the podcast, is that I can talk about Riesengrot or Lefse from Norway or Pavlova from Australia, and then someone who hasn't heard of those things, they go, "Oh, okay. What can I do? Where can I find that? Or who can I talk to get it to so I can try it?" So hopefully I've piqued an interest for people to explore some other cultures and some other different foods from Christmas.
Do you have anything coming up that you'd like to tease without spoiling anything?
No, it's never a spoil. I usually drop episodes on the 25th of every month. I try to do a bonus episode in the Burr months, so September through December, just because we seem to want a little bit extra for that time of year. So this coming episode is going to be about nougat. So I know I mean, my experience with nougat is mostly in a Mars bar or, in a Milky Way bar. I think they're almost the same thing there. But at Christmas time in Italy, they're out by the plate loads.
Really? It's nougat by itself.
Yeah. You make nougat. It's basically like a more solid marshmallow, and you just add fruit and nuts to it, and a little bit of honey and a little bit of other spices, and slice it up in little squares and enjoy.
Joseph, anything coming up that you'd like to tease without spoiling anything?
Well, I'll tell you, we generally kind of fly by the seat of our pants with our show. So We never really know what we're going to be doing from week to week, but this summer we've kind of dedicated ourselves to watching sort of summer style action movies that either have a Christmas flavor or happen to be set around the holidays. And I believe our next one is this is subject to change, but I think it's the James Bond movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which I've always heard takes place around the holidays, which for us that makes it fair game. So get excited for that one.
Have you guys done Die Hard?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just going to ask.
We've done Die Hard. We've done Die Hard 2. And then on Christmas Day itself, we always like to release a movie that's, I guess, the opposite of Christmas, which is generally 4th of July. So we did Live Free or Die Hard, which does actually take place on the 4th of July.
So in the summer, you're not doing summer Christmas movies?
Well,
or try not to. I'm just asking because you will have to do Santa Jaws.
I want to do Santa Jaws so badly. I've seen parts of it. I've never been able to get a physical copy of it for myself, but I would really love to do that. Yes. Yes. Someday.
How about The Sure Thing? Have you guys done that one?
We have, yeah. And that was one that we actually had Alonso Duralde join us for that one. If you're familiar with his work, he literally wrote the book on Christmas movies, and we were happy to have him. That was a great time.
Very cool. What's the best way for people to find Christmas Creeps?
ChristmasCreeps.com is pretty good. We are also on Twitter at Christmas Creeps, and the same on Instagram and Facebook.
Glenn, what's the best way for people to find Seasons Eatings?
Seasons Eatings can be found at seasonseatingspodcast.com. All the links are there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, also wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
Terrific. Thank you both for taking some time and joining us today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. And the best thing to do when you're baking for Christmas is to have the sounds of Christmas on the background.
Very nice. I'd just like to mention I didn't pay anything for him to say that.
Sure you didn't. No, thanks for having me. It was a great time.
And thank you so much for listening and for continuing to support the Sounds of Christmas station and podcast. Station is still on, by the way. So anytime you need a little Christmas spirit, just head on over to soundsofchristmas.com and click on the tree or the player on the front page or on the Listen Now page. You can also find our app in the Google Play Store. And as far as this podcast goes, we're now on over 30 podcasting sites. So whichever is your favorite is a place you'll probably find us. Just search for the Sounds of Christmas there. And when you see the tree, click subscribe, and then you'll never miss another episode. If you have comments or suggestions on this episode, previous episodes, the Sounds of Christmas station, or the upcoming standard station, feel free to reach out to me on social media or through the website. Thanks again. And may you always believe in Santa Claus.